Quick note before we begin. This podcast was recorded a few months ago, so there may be one or two things that are a little dated. Most pertinently, the end of the Disney collaboration with Doctor Who hadn't yet been announced when we recorded, so you may need to cut us a little bit of slack regarding our takes. As long as a Disney Plus drop of Between Land and the Sea comes late this year or early next, our next pod will be on that. If not, it'll be about something else. Regardless, we'll be back next year. Enjoy the show. I'm Shane Thomas, and this is Analysing Doctor Who. I'm joined by Emma Foster, Rick Tatro, and Ken Deep, and we are here to analyse the entire last series of Doctor Who. So if you have any thoughts on our upcoming thoughts or anything else Doctor Who based, you can email us at analysingdoctorwho@gmail.com. So if we start, Ken, I'll come to you first. From the past series we've had, what was your high point?
Alan Cummings' performance in Lux, his vocal performance. I think that was my favorite part of the whole series, just bringing a humanity and a compassion to an animated character.
If I'm remembering right, I think we had you and Mike on. I think you mentioned Alan Cummings. I think it might have been your MVP. And this is for his second appearance in the show.
Correct. He was in the Chody episode, right? Was it Witchfinders?
But yeah, it was a very good work from him. I think one of the better episodes of the series. Emma, if I come to your series high point?
I think The Well for me. I think it's the best realised episode, sort of the thing that sort of is my jam. The kind of sci-fi that I like is represented in The Well. As much as I think it would have been a massive mistake to over-explain the Midnight Entity, I think that actually pulled off the twist really well. I think it's a really creepy and effective episode. I think the relationship between Belinda and the Doctor is sort of looking at the totality of the series and kind of what we thought we were going to get going in is probably about where I think we thought it was going to be, if you see what I mean. So yeah, I think that in taken as a whole, looking at the whole of series 2, I'm going to say The Well, yeah.
This is actually partly also mine, but I'll come back to that. Rick, if I come to your series high point?
Just from an overall story standpoint and just the full episode, I've got to go with the story in the engine. It was so different from anything we've seen from Doctor Who before. I really enjoyed the mythology they got into. I enjoyed the fact that it wasn't the usual group of faces we see on every episode of Doctor Who. And it was probably the only time, and you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, really the only time they kind of lent into Ncuti's ethnicity from a story standpoint.
I think they definitely lean into that before, but it's not just as far as his race, but also his origins are Nigeria, the Rwanda, but as a migrant from Africa. That is the first and only time in the show, because of who the Doctor was, that they've done that before.
Now, I want to ask a quick question before we go any further, because I was listening to the Reality War episode y'all did, and y'all were calling him Ncuti. Have we been pronouncing it wrong all along?
Apparently so, and we know that because he said so.
My name is pronounced Ncuti. It's like an Ncuti. Only learned properly how to pronounce it at 26. When I started coming into the public eye, I did this whole video like, you pronounce my name Ncuti, shoot like a shooting star, and then an E on the end, shoot it. And my mum called me like, what are you talking about? That's not how you say your name. That's not how you say it. I was like, oh, right. Thanks for telling me, Mum. At 26.
It was actually very interesting because of the casting of the Doctor and the Companion, how they are, in a weird way, they're almost perfect avatars, I think, for the UK, a multicultural country in 2025, because both people of colour, they're both here because families migrated to the country, parents migrated to the country. Their connection, their familial connection to the UK is based on the UK's imperial past. They would be seen as quote-unquote assimilated, and they both have names that are very much indicate their heritage, not the country they live in, but the country their ancestors came from. And both their names are often mispronounced. But if you are from Africa or Asia, or maybe even parts of South America, and then you move to a nation where English is like the first language or the most common language, you will often find your name being mispronounced as part of your existence. And Rajiv Setu has spoken about this.
You pronounce your name in a very authentic, proper manner. Can you pronounce your name for me, please?
Varada Setu.
When you enter the media industry, you can quite often have to dumb down your name, your culture, your identity for the acceptance of other people. How conscious are you of making sure that you stay true to yourself?
Not conscious enough. It's something that I didn't have much when I was younger. I'd certainly kind of shied away from my heritage, which is something that I feel really sad about because it's a part of my identity that I was suppressing. When I'm in interviews, there are times when I call myself Varada. It has to be a conscious effort for me to say Varada. I want to reclaim that name back because, you know, even when I was in school, in the first school, it was everyone just called me Varada. And then, you know, sometimes it'd be Veranda. It would be so frustrating. That meant that when I moved school, I wanted it to be, you either say my name properly, which is Varada, or you call me V. But if you can say my name properly, then great. But it's also I just appreciate the effort.
How much you also have to hold back because there can often also be an assumption that you don't want to draw too much attention to your otherness or your differentness in that industry.
I'm trying to claim that otherness because I think it's the best way to be the most authentic version of myself. I think it's what makes me special. It's what makes me unique. It was my given name. That's how it should be pronounced. But it's still a conscious effort because I'm so used to not wanting to bring attention to myself. Certainly when you're in school and you're a teenager, you want to fit in. You don't want to stand out. Whereas as you get older, I think it's the opposite. It flips.
In a way, it's very telling of the experience of someone like him in 2025 UK, that he has a name that any of us, for the first time we saw it, were probably like, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. And then you hear shooting, you're like, oh, okay, get rid of the N, turn the C into an SH. And then we found out later, this was part of he just mentioned it as a throwaway in a promotion for his first series. So I don't think it's the kind of thing where you're being culturally insensitive if you slightly mispronounced it, because if you don't know, you don't know. So I don't think it's something that a lot of people know because he himself hasn't spoke about it much, but I did catch him saying it one time. And as far as the episode goes, the story in the engine, one thing that I think makes that a very distinct and unique Doctor Who episode is not just because of the optics of the people in it, but you know, you have a British Nigerian, Inu Elams write it. He brings a very specific cultural context of storytelling from Nigeria, which is more an oral type of storytelling, which you know, it's not written down, it's not in textbooks, maybe not on websites, it's informal but quite personable, where someone tells you something. And I think that was baked into the episode because we've had lots of myths from other countries and other parts of the world that Doctor Who have lent on plenty of times. But because the oral type of storytelling is something that is a lot more common there's a job for it, it's called a griot, but like more common in places like Africa and Asia and like the indigenous parts of Australasia and the Americas. That in turn makes how you tell that story a bit different, just because the origins of how those stories were told are different than the kind of way we probably grew up taking stories in when you're reading in books.
And I would like to see more of this as they go on with the show, assuming, and I know we'll talk about that later. I kind of felt like both with Jodie and with Ncuti, a lot of missed opportunities to explore rather than just ignore the fact that, the doctor's a woman or the doctor's a black man or the doctor's a gay man. I think they just sort of touched on those things lightly a little bit to say, see, all right, we did it. And I would have loved to have seen them do deep dives into, hey, I'm this now. Let's go check out what this means.
There's two ways of going with something like that. Either run straight towards it and then use it as an impetus to tell a certain kind of story, or downplay it and make it normal. Like, well, we don't really have to talk about it because that's just what I am. There's kind of two ways to go with that. And it's really just a stylistic choice, I think. I personally like the downplayed aspect. I like the idea that we just treat people the same no matter what they look like or act like or call themselves or are exploring in their life.
How I think they did it with Ncuti was, this is the Doctor, so he would go around like the Doctor. But every now and then, something external happens to him, which means this isn't the same Doctor as it is before. And like he mentions it in the story in the engine, he mentions it explicitly just before they leave the TARDIS at the beginning, that sometimes people look at me and treat me differently. So I don't think he was expressly looking at how it was written, how it was acted. It's completely like different Doctor because it's black, but because it's black, you all have different experiences, and they did kind of put those in episodes like the end of Dot and Bubble, the story in the engine. elements of Lux had that. So yeah, you can basically go one or two ways. And in the end, I think they tried to choose both, as in we're not explicitly going to do that, but through the course of the Doctor's adventures, it will come up. I don't think it's explicitly right or wrong, and each fan will have their own preferences.
Yeah, and I wasn't criticizing so much as, just from my standpoint, seeing what they did with the story in the engine. I would have loved to have seen more stuff like that, and the fact that it makes so much sense that the Doctor knows the gods. They're acknowledging that the gods were there, even though they kind of play with that idea over and over again. But I liked it, and I wish I would have liked more of that.
So my series Highpoint is also The Well, but I'm being specific with it, particularly because I just rewatched some of it a few days ago, specifically around the 18-minute 30 mark. Because that's the moment in the episode when Belinda first notices what we'll call, for want of a better phrase, the Midnight Monster. And that's the moment when the episode changes in its tone and paranoia and mistrust really sets in. That's the time of the episode where the character of Alice, played by Rose Ayling-Ellis, she gets treated with immense just disrespect and almost cruelty by the soldiers, like she's in an existential threat herself. RTD co-wrote this with Charmaine Woeful, but this felt like, from David's perspective, kind of some of his best stuff, as in it's perfectly his wheelhouse, because I think he might be the best at putting a group of just disparate people together in an enclosed space, dangerous situation, and the drama comes from those people being around each other, and often the contempt characters have for one another. It was brilliantly shown in Midnight, and he has a chance to do something similar with the sequel, because the real power of the Midnight Monster is that it brings out the very worst in people. I'm not sure there's another writer that I can think of as good at this, at showing how difficult situations often actually don't bring people together. It usually makes them very scared and spiteful and resentful. All of a sudden you get put in a situation, every character now is also it's your fault. No, it's your fault. No, you just made me angry. Or no, I just did this because you made me do it. You made me hurt you, kind of thing. Look at how the characters interact with each other. No one will take any responsibility for how they treat each other. And they're very eager to blame someone else for their actions. No accountability will be taken. I think he communicates that maybe better than any of his peers. I struggle to think of another writer that can do that as effectively as him. And it starts around 80 minutes 30, because that moment then leads quickly into the reveal of the planet, that this used to be called Midnight. The soldiers start to get picked off one by one, and then the ultimate mutiny among the soldiers towards the captain. Like Emma, these kind of episodes I really like. I think this is the kind of thing Russell does. I think he's elite at this. And that is the moment in the episode where I was absolutely gripped. And as I was watching, I'm thinking, this is one of the best bits of TV I've seen this year. I stand by that. I still think, even now we are in almost 2/3 of the year, I still think as an episode of TV, I think this is one of the best. And it explains why Russell said before the series started, maybe try and watch episode 3 as soon as you can. Try not to wait. And I don't think it's even the twist of, this planet is called Midnight, but it's what the planet does to people. And what this monster does to people. I've seen him do this in other bits of his work as well, but it's probably never been done as well as when he's done in Doctor Who. So, Rick, I'll come to you first for your series Lowpoint.
I've got to go with the Robot Revolution. As I was going through, just refreshing my memory about what each episode was, I knew I'd watched it. I couldn't remember what happened. And in fact, I just had to look up pictures of what the robots looked like. My mind kept clicking back to Robots of Doom, the Tom Baker age. Utterly forgettable episode. And when you've only got 8 episodes, you can't afford to have one that's forgettable. I don't recall it being bad. I don't remember not liking it, but I don't really remember much about it at all. And that's a big crime in today's television.
When I broadly liked it as a series opener, I really liked the moment the Doctor and Belinda meet for the first time.
Once upon a time, the planet was united. Listen, the robots and people lived together in peace too. But then 10 years ago, it all changed. Me. Because on that day, the robot revolution arose. Please.
What?
Thank you for listening attentively to my story. Careful.
Okay.
The AI generator evolved and achieved perfection. Robots. It told its soldiers to conquer all life faulty. No one knows why. It remains a mystery. Cannot. So the mighty robots marched across the world here. People fought back, but they are weak flesh. They begged for kindness and hoped for peace. 9th. But then the AI generator conquered them. Word. Robots faulty cannot hear every 9th word.
So, thank you very much. Very, very much. Gotcha.
I thought it was a really clever scene because it's I don't know what's going on here, and then you start to understand like Belinda does. It felt like a solid 3-star episode. I don't know if it's an episode I'll go to revisit, but it's interesting how you put it to a series low point, not because it was necessarily the worst, but because it felt the most nondescript and forgettable.
Well, I also found the conceit that somebody named a star after his girlfriend, and then through a bizarre series of events, there's a planet that's dedicated to that. And it was just kind of like, I know this is Doctor Who, and I know they can be silly sometimes, but that just really strained credulity there.
I think it's because it comes across a little bit like RTD trying to wear Stephen Moffat's clothes, because he's the king of like the series of bizarre events that don't really seem to fit together until you get to the end. You go, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, but it just, it did a little bit strain credulity. And I think the worst thing about Robot Revolution is they try to do the kind of incel plot line, which I think doesn't really fit with what they're doing. And it's because it comes in like 10 minutes before the end. And I think is they could sort of realize, oh, we haven't really got enough enough motivation or enough something. This episode's missing something. We need to talk about something. We need a speech at the end, and then, oh no, just make him an incel.
Yeah.
And then I think it doesn't really fit with the rest of it.
While there were some good baddies this season, a lot of the villains or the MacGuffin or whatever were just really dispatched so easily, especially at the end. And, we don't need to rehash Reality War, but there was a lot of that, a lot of build up, and then push this button, everything's all better. And there was a lot of that this season.
I mean, I'll save my series low point, but funny enough, we'll definitely be return to that. Ken, what was your series low point?
I think it was the sort of the clunky ending to the season. I know that we may discuss this later on, the reshoots and the changes, the pickups that were done when it was decided that Ncuti was leaving, and a lot of things changed. And that's a little bit disappointing, but even not knowing that, it still has a clunky feel to it. I think Russell had 2 finales that just didn't punch the way we had hoped for.
And if I come to you for the series low point,
what happens to Belinda? I almost want to call it out and out misogynistic that you have this character who gets every bit of her autonomy stripped away for a baby that didn't exist because the doctor just, I don't know, felt like it. Dog shit. Irredeemable dog shit in my eyes. It hits close to home, this sort of thing.
We spoke about, and that was a podcast with 3 men on it, but we did speak about the use of Belinda. I know Mike in particular similarly detested the use of Belinda. She basically got stuck in a box. I mean, I believe my point I think I made was the issue wasn't that she was a mother. The issue that her identity singularly became as a mother. Everything that we'd seen before was not part of this person. It wasn't like she was a mother along with all the personality traits that we'd seen in the previous 7 episodes. It was she was a mother beginning and end.
There's a moment that I literally, because I went to see this in the cinema, that I think my jaw was literally on the floor for the entire of that sequence. I was like, okay, so what are we actually doing here? Oh, we are actually doing that. I mean, I want to question a lot of Russell's decisions in these last 2 series. It's sort of a series of decisions that really made me question, because I think I've been enthusiastic about series 2 up until that, where I've been on the pod, and I enjoyed the individual episodes up until Interstellar Song Contest. It really made me think, like, regret being on the show and like saying that I enjoyed it almost, because I was like, I'm a fucking idiot for going with this guy because this is what he's decided to put on the screen.
But the thing is, the stuff you liked, you weren't wrong if that's how you felt.
Yeah, that is. But it's like that is kind of how I felt in the moment. It was kind of that fundamental, like a shock almost. I was like, in the length of time since the show's been on, and in a way, it's good that we're doing this episode now. So I think if you'd asked me in the heat of the moment, I would have gone on an uninterrupted 30-minute rant about it. it sort of had time to settle down in my mind and say, no, I did appreciate and enjoy those episodes at the time, and I still like them. But I think it's going to take me a long time to sit down and want to watch those again and find any redeeming qualities in any of it.
Well, I almost said Belinda for my low point because I don't really feel like we ever got to know her. I don't think she ever got to do anything other than complain that she wasn't going home and go, oh, this is a neat planet. Let's go get something to eat. I mean, it was so uneven with her. In the last 2 episodes, as soon as Ruby showed up, Belinda stopped doing anything. She stopped being the companion. Ruby became the driving force.
I really think something really fundamental and weird happened behind the scenes, or Disney interfered or something, because Reality War makes no sense the way it is, like, for many reasons. But the most obvious thing is Belinda shouldn't be in it. It should be Ruby in Belinda's role. Yeah. That makes 10,000% more sense, especially when you have Poppy in it, because Ruby met her. There's a line in Space Babies where they say, oh, we wish you were your mummy and daddy, but we're not.
Obviously, there's been a lot of just, and we're doing it now, speculation and trying to
figure out what went so wrong.
Try and make sense of the decisions that were made and also just how people felt about it. And there is a school of thought that was meant to be Ruby rather than Belinda. And when Millie Gibson was not available, they kind of repurposed it. But there is stuff from Space Babies where if you look at the 2 series as an overall arc, it would have made more sense if it had been Ruby from the start.
Yeah, 100%.
That doesn't mean it would have been. It's just something that would have made more sense.
I mean, I think as well, talking about Belinda particularly, I think that Russell gassed her up and saying that, she's going to be antagonistic to the Doctor. It's not going to be easy. They're going to have a bit more of a combative relationship than him and Ruby, and that lasted for an episode and a half. That's why I think that I particularly, after that point in the instance, because it's got that amazing special effect with after the attack, all the people coming out of the oxygen bubble and stuff, and then it just really went downhill for me after that to an unrecoverable position, to the point that I don't know how we continue from here.
I'm just glad you said that, because I was afraid to say that I didn't like that episode, because I figured it's just because as an American, I don't get most of what it was doing, because we don't get the song contest over here.
Because it was wrapped up a lot here with obviously the politics of the Eurovision Song Contest and current world events, which it's not really about at all, but obviously people kind of put that analogy on it. So before running up to the episode, there was lots of discourse around that. And especially then you watch the behind the scenes stuff, and Russell's going, it's like Die Hard, but Eurovision. I was like, Russell, this isn't Die Hard at all.
Well, I think it's just the person, the people taking over the headquarters, the hero in there has to get to the villain and stop them. Which, I mean, yes, it's Die Hard. It's a lot of things. I wouldn't say it's just that Die Hard, but when you're promoting it, you use something that people like and is well regarded, like Die Hard as an example. Israel and Palestine came up a lot, and it was just like, this was probably written before October the 7th. So we spoke about this in the episode. Again, if you haven't listened to our podcast on it, we spoke about it on the podcast. It literally doesn't fit. The timeline doesn't fit for it to explicitly be about that. I think it was a more generic, I don't know if pacifist is the right word, a generic, can we maybe be kind of to each other?
Get along,
rather than specifically talking about one thing that was happening in one part of the world. I agreed with Belinda in the last 2 episodes. Everything up to then I was fine with, because they start confrontational, and it wouldn't have worked if that was every week. That just would have got kind of slightly old, like you're photocopying the same storyline. In a way, I think it's partly because just the performances and how well those 2 got on, but it felt the bond between them got tighter because it didn't start tight at first, and Belinda was agnostic about the Doctor, but I never thought it was going to stay like that. And by the time of episodes, well, I think it's that things really start to, a bond starts to forge. Or Lux, actually, when they're animated. By episode 6, firm friends. But episode 7 and 8, she does just become, I think Mike's words were, they put her in a box.
Yeah.
Which is literally what happened by Reality War. And it did feel as if, it's not as if it was a impossible situation that you couldn't write your way out of. There's a way to have Ruby and Belinda in these 2 episodes and make it work. They didn't actually have that much screen time until episode 8. But it did feel as if the story didn't have the space for them both. But there's no real reason it couldn't have done. Okay, my low point is the use of the Rani. I know Ken spoke about this in our Wish World episode, and I'm really kind of just piggybacking and extending what he said. I actually loved her introduction at the end of the Interstellar Song Contest as the post-credit sequence. The threat of her being dangerous, well rendered. I love the theme that Murray Gold wrote for her. the way they kind of weaved it in at the end to set up Wishfall, I thought was pretty artfully done, because you see that and then you were kind of like, oh, next week, can't wait for next week, which is the point of a scene like that. But as those 2 episodes progress, her impact just felt less and less consequential. And I don't mean take her out on the episodes the same. You do actually need her in for the plot. But what she contributes to the episodes didn't feel particularly impactful at all. Like, I'm wondering if fans can even remember just off memory what her evil scheme was, why she was doing what she was doing, or like what was the end game for her. And I think you just said, Rick, in terms of the use of villains in this series in general, not only should they be a big threat, but once they're finally dealt with, which obviously they're meant to be, you should feel it's just taken something from my hero.
Yeah.
Whether literally or psychologically or emotionally. I think of, like, I wasn't wild about Sound of Drums, Last of the Time Lords with the Master, but when the Master is shot and cough, cough, killed, not really, but you can see that take, I mean, it's Tennant's performance as well, you can see it take something from the Doctor.
Dying in your arms. Happy now? You're not dying, don't be stupid. It's only a bullet, just regenerate. No. One little bullet, come on. I guess you don't know me so well. I refuse. Regenerate. Just regenerate. Please, please, just regenerate, come on.
I'll spend the rest of my life imprisoned with you.
You've got to, come on. You can't end like this. You and me, all the things we've done. Axons, remember the Axons? And the Daleks. We're the only 2 left. There's no one else. Regenerate!
How about that? I win. Will it stop, Doctor? It's drumming. Will it stop?
There is a change. And I think if you watch how Tennant acts, performs series 4, his last full series, I think you see it. It took a lot to vanquish the Master, and it took a lot from the Doctor. And you don't feel this took a lot. Ultimately, the Doctor ends up regenerating, but you don't feel, oh, this Doctor will be changed going through this experience. And I always think that makes a villain really mean something. It makes them memorable, because you know you had to. It's like if your favorite sports team like narrowly win a big game or win a big tournament or whatever, but it was a really narrow win done in like with 10 seconds on the clock. You as a fan and those players and the coach, there's a feeling of, Jesus Christ, that took a lot out of us. You should feel that with your hero when they are ultimately triumphant at the end. And there wasn't, I think I said it on a Reality War pod, she felt like just a monster of the week. And the Rani should not ever feel like that. We spoke about it in a lot more depth on the Reality War pod, so I won't repeat it too much. The episode, Reality War, too many villains. You make the Rani your main antagonist or Omega your main antagonist. You don't shoehorn in both. It was a very clear case of subtraction by addition. And it's underscored by the fact that if you think about how much talk there'd been for so long, particularly online, any woman that showed up in the show was apparently going to be the Rani for years, how much anticipation there was for the Rani to show up. She's one of the few old villains, big villains we hadn't seen. It also was a very rare, prominent role for an Asian actor on this show. The whole endeavor, now that we can look back on it, was really, really disappointing. I don't think it's the worst thing in the series, but the reason why it's my low point is you think of what we were expecting. I think fairly expecting, by the way. I don't think our expectations were too high. You think of what we were expecting and what you should be getting from your primary villain, and what we ended up getting, like, it was a real chasm between the two. And obviously there's no reason that the Rani can't return, but I wouldn't anticipate anything near the same level of enthusiasm if and when she does. And that's because of what we got from her in this series. So we move on. Sorry, go on, Emma.
No, I was gonna start talking about the Rani game, but no, part of that is fine.
Okay, well, I come to you on the fact is the 15th Doctor's run has now come at an end. Ncuti Gatwa's 10 years of Doctor is finished, so it's only fair that we have something of a retrospective on his time in a role over the past 2 years.
See, here's the thing. I think because I'm still feeling quite raw about how it's all ended, I sort of find it difficult to be not objective, but like as fair as maybe I should be about Ncuti's time. I will never say that anyone has ever miscasted the Doctor. Never. I think they all bring you their own unique flavour ideas. I think that Ncuti brought some really interesting energy and lots of different, like the way that he delivered some of these lines. Like you would never see that at any out of the Doctors. Because one of the criticisms I think you can always find is like sometimes when you have a new Doctor, they'll do a scene or an episode and you think, well, how's that function different from what I've just seen? But he was so different always, like his analysis of the role and what he chose to do. I can't fault any of it. The only thing I would say about Ncuti was, I wouldn't say he's the wrong choice, but was he the right choice with his availability? Because I think, Ken, we were last time me and you were on a pod together, you were saying about, he's done 18 episodes and he's not in a few of them.
Yeah.
So was he the right choice in terms of having him in front of the camera as much as they wanted, having to do these series back to back, then having to have him make a choice about staying in or not? Because I don't believe for a minute any of this thing about, it was always the plan. Fuck off, no, it wasn't. You're weird bullshit. So having to either stick around and see what happened with this or taking off with his career. Apparently he's had to turn down a lot of stuff to do anything with who up until the point at which he left. So it would have been an incredibly brave person to say, we'll come back to you in 5 years when we can't afford you. There's this whole thing about that Russell apparently was locked and loaded on someone else up until literally, and she was like the last.
Yeah, that was the story.
That was the story.
It was the last one in the door. I think, isn't that the same thing with Karen Gillan as Amy?
Yeah, there's a few different people.
She was the last one in, and then they went, "Oh, okay, this person we thought we were going with. We'll look at this person instead."
Yeah, so I mean, it would have been an incredibly brave person to turn him down on the basis that he's not available enough. But I think you have to look at that as a criticism of making this show when it has had an effect on the show as a whole, and where we are now is partly because his availability and lack thereof.
Fair assessment. Now, was he that popular at the time?
It was more that he was still filming the finale of Sex Education, which is why series 1 is the way it is. Mm-hmm. And then he's doing a big film with Benedict Cumberbatch and Olivia Colman, which is going to drop in a couple of weeks. So he was filming that. So he was busy doing other things.
Series 2, wasn't his availability pretty standard, as in he misses one episode? There's one.
Yeah, but there's only 8 episodes. So, they were doing Dr. Lights when they were doing 13 episodes because it was just production and jiggling around. So in terms of that, it's like, well, do we really need you to miss an episode if we're only doing 8?
See, I don't have as much an issue with that, maybe because we've had, even though it's more episodes, we've been accustomed to them missing one. If he's there for all series 1, I don't think him missing one in series 2 is much of a big deal. It's because he missed 2 and a bit episodes in series 1. First series, I mean. Yeah, you notice that because that's 2/3 of the series.
Yeah, and the fact that, he attributes burnout to him moving on. So the fact that they had to film it so intensely, doing all this stuff back to back, has then got to contribute to the fact that he felt like the burnout was a factor. I think it was a factor. There is all these circumstances about he will stay on or not, and he wants to go and do something else. But I think if he was sitting at home thinking about if he wants to stay on or not, he's got to be thinking about the amount of work, the hours, the physical commitment has got to weigh you down. And you think, I don't want to do that again. It's got to be a factor in your mind when you're sitting, when you're laying in bed at night and close your eyes and you're thinking, do I want to do this or not? Do I want to commit to this again or not? Do I want to hang around and do this again? It's got to be part of your thought process. So it certainly would be for me. And there was numerous, I think there's probably more than we know about, things of him getting told off for doing stuff while he is the Doctor. He got told off for promoting things. There was an incident because he's mates with Gillian Anderson, obviously from Sex Education. Did you know Gillian Anderson has an energy drink line? No. He got told, she does. It's called G-Spot, of course.
Of course.
Of course. And he got told off for promoting G-Spot on his Instagram account. He got told off for smoking while in uniform, essentially. Things like that, again, when you're sitting down, and apparently he had to turn down a very lucrative perfume promotion gig because he's, in Doctor Who and things like that. Again, when you're making that decision, these things grate on you that you haven't got the freedom to do what you want, even because I've got this role. It's got to factor in. So, like I say, I think Russell would have been extremely brave to turn around to Ncuti and say, "I love you, but your availability and the things that you want to do don't fit with what we need you for." So I don't think he was miscast in the way that he's bad or his acting was bad or he shouldn't have been the Doctor, blah, blah, blah. Never. I loved his performance and I would never take away from that. But those factors have to be taken into account by the people who make this show, Russell T Davies.
Yes, your issue is like with the actor. It's not an acting issue. It's more
not
a production.
No, it's a production thing. Yeah.
I was more skeptical when he mentioned that of being, not that it's not grueling. It is a very, look, you've spoken before, Emma, about doctors have had to get surgeries doing this job.
Peter Capaldi and Matt Smith both had to have the same knee surgery. I mean, just from I've got an injury to the same knee. I think they tore the meniscus in both their knees because you have to pivot on one leg to run down corridors, then take a corner.
It felt to me more like that's the excuse I'm going to give. I'm not saying it's not grueling. I don't know if other things were fine, if that would have stopped him doing it. Maybe it's an ancillary reason. It's not. Yeah, it wasn't the main reason.
Yeah, I'm not saying it was the reason, but I think again, if you're looking at the whole calculus of it as a person and performer, it's got to factor in.
Shane, you pointed me in the direction of a YouTube video that really put this.
The Ellie Littlechild did. It's very good for those who haven't seen it. So I think it's very fair-minded.
Yeah.
A lot of those videos on YouTube are absolute nonsense and you avoid them. And it is just someone splenetically ranting. They have a prearranged agenda. The Ellie Littlechild is not like that at all.
I hadn't really considered the economics of it. Also, when we saw him say, this role is just too physically demanding for me. And we've seen him in all but naked all over the internet. And the dude is a fucking Greek god. He is.
And he's currently doing ballet training.
Oh, no, he is a beef castle.
Yeah, if you wanted a physical break, you wouldn't be doing that.
But yeah, the fact that Disney hasn't committed to a third season and he's basically losing money every time while he's sitting there waiting for them to get off their asses and decide what they're going to do. And he's the hot shit right now. I absolutely don't blame him. I just wish he would, or, maybe it's the BBC sitting on him or RTD or something, but like, stop treating us like idiots. Don't lie to the public. Just be straight up. This gig is not giving me what I need. And I'm done. Like with Jodie, when they announced that the next Doctor was going to be a black man, and not just a black man, an openly gay black man, of course, all of the haters out there lost their minds. And those of us who are not that way thought, hey, this will be great. And it was. Overall, for the most part, I love watching Ncuti play. He has been a joy. But I'm afraid just doing 2 seasons, and then especially if the Disney deal crumbles, I think this is going to end up being just a footnote in Doctor Who history instead of a triumph like it should be.
So, Ken, if I come to you on the same topic?
Could be best classified as a missed opportunity. I think the rationale for casting him was that it was pretty obvious that his star was on a sort of meteoric rise. I think there was probably a decision between Bad Wolf, Russell and Julie and people like that, and Disney just saying, listen, let's get him while we can. And they had hoped for 3, and he probably hoped for 3, and just circumstances were in his career were moving faster than he anticipated, or maybe the gig was a little different, or maybe the backlash, like you were saying about he has a few controversial elements, like you're saying, his endorsements and things like that. And perhaps it's just plain old homophobia, that there was a good chunk of people that just weren't ready for someone so out to tackle the role. Unfortunately, that's going to overshadow the magnificent job he did as charming and well acted. And probably the number one thing is the guy changed his costume all the time. I was one of those people that thought that John Nathan Turner did way too much uniform costumes when it came to companions and doctors, and liked it when they changed it up like a real person would. They wouldn't be wearing the same thing for long term. And being a stylish young guy, he decided he was going to wear some fun clothes. I think that's how I'd sum it up. I thought he was a fantastic Doctor. I really enjoyed his performances. This might be, like Christopher Eccleston, like Paul McGann, a case of less is more. We're just going to have to enjoy what we have when we look back on this.
I think it's a very salient point. I'll get to more of that, but we haven't spoken much about his performance yet. I felt, and I said this before Series 1, and I said it throughout our podcast for Series 2, that his first series was much like watching a good actor, but his second was when I thought I was watching a good Doctor. And I've said it to the point of, I'm sure, of boredom now, but playing this character is very much like learning a new language. And no one becomes fluent immediately. And go and look back at all his predecessors and go and look at their first series and then look at them midway through the tenure towards the end of the tenure. They're different. And it's because they become fluent in a language. And Ncuti became maybe not 100% fluent, but I think definitely 85, 90% by the time we got to series 2. There were little touches he did in that second series that I noticed was times where he was figuring things out. He'd put his hands behind his back. And that felt like a bit of a visual signature, very much like William Hartnell grabbing the lapel of his blazer. That's his thing. I'm not sure I've ever seen a Doctor so good when reacting at being still. He's a really, really compelling presence when he's actually almost still. He can hold the screen by doing, on the face of it, so little. In hindsight, actually, I think the more energetic he was, and he was more energetic in series 1, the less compelling I found him. There are some echoes of William Hartnell. William Hartnell wasn't energetic. William Hartnell was very still. And he didn't need to be bouncing around. He was a lot more measured in his movement. And when Ncuti became more measured in his movement, I found him. That's when I thought I was watching an alien who's like a millennium years old, rather than a guy in his 30s, a very charismatic guy with a great personality in his 30s, but a guy in his 30s wearing a costume. Series 2, I'm like, I'm watching this person embody an alien who's experienced more and seen more than we ever will. And that's an aspect of his performance that I keep hitting. I know I've said it a few times on our podcast. I keep hitting it because I don't think it's mentioned enough. And I would encourage anyone, if they're doing rewatches 1 and 2, but particularly 2, just watch how he is when he's not moving much and he's being very still. Like he does have, we've mentioned about his career, like he kind of does belong on a movie screen. I don't just mean everyone talks about his face, but his whole presence. Imagine that on IMAX.
Charisma.
Yeah, imagine that on IMAX. I think he's maybe the only actor who's not in Christopher Nolan's version of The Odyssey, but like I could see him in that, or like in Sinners or something like that easily. He really, really effective when doing little, and that's not something. The only other Doctors, definitely modern day, Capaldi a bit, but that's not Smith, that's not Tennant, it's definitely not Jodie Whittaker, and not even really Christopher Eccleston either. So that was a unique energy, I think, to a modern Doctor that he brought. I think part of some of the reaction to him leaving is that this regeneration kind of broke the rules. So I think some fans are like, no, that's not how it's meant to work. He's leaving. We should know. We should know, and we should know who it's going to be, who they're turning into. I think a lot of us suspected, so I wasn't shocked when it was happening, but we didn't know. There was no announcement that this was going to be his final episode until they spoke about it on the Unleashed. And in a weird way, he hasn't been around long enough for us to get tired of him. Usually with the previous Doctors, even though we acknowledge that they were very good and they very important to the show, big deal, they matter to us. Often by the time they get to the end, we're like, yeah, it's probably time. Thank you for your service, but it is probably time you move on. That was definitely not the case here. I mean, I do wonder if he was around long enough for him to get tired of the show, because usually Doctors, when they get to the end, they look knackered. They look somewhat changed. I think he used to say about, well, currently not the current incumbent, but usually to say about the American presidency, that you could do a before and after picture when they take the oath of office, and then when they leave, when the successor comes in, they look two different people. Mm-hmm. That sometimes feels like the case with definitely modern Doctors. Ncuti didn't. He doesn't look exhausted. He looks the same as when he was cast, vibrant, as young as he ever did. And I'm just wondering, going on about what some of you were saying about the decision to cast him. Like, he's one of the more famous people to get this role, where sometimes an actor gets cast and you're like, I know that is. And then you start Googling to see like what they've been in. When he was cast, there were some people like, oh, who's that? But you couldn't go Sex Education. And most people were like, oh, I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it. So he's done some stuff. Obviously, Capaldi had a long career. Jodie Whittaker had something of a career as well, but Tennant didn't really have much of that. And it was like, oh, he's in Harry Potter for like 5 minutes. Matt Smith was very much a who. When Ncuti didn't have that. So he does bring an extra, not expectation, but I have some familiarity with him.
And you've got to remember, he was much more famous amongst the youths. You know, the people who are younger than us, like the people who are 20s and 30s, we're watching Sex Education rather than us old gits. So, like, because remember, he's the first Gen Z Doctor, because he's the first one I'm actually older than. That's my kind of barometer of, because all the other Doctors, Jodie Whittaker and Matt Smith, are like a year older than me, all the rest of them. So, Ncuti's the first one I'm actually older than, which is sort of my splitting point.
But yeah, so he does like he's something of a known quantity, which often isn't the case. It looks like he was trending upwards. I am just wondering, in conjunction with the deal with Disney, if gamble is probably the right word for it. The gamble was he could be the rising tide to lift the Doctor Who boat. Where almost this sounds, I don't mean to sound as cynical as this is going to sound. I think this is a perfectly understandable thing for any television or any production to do. But almost if we latch onto this guy, he'll bring in new people. You mentioned Sex Education. Yeah, I mean, I'd watch a little bit of it. But you're right, it was a very popular show among people probably a little bit younger than us. And it might drag people in who had never considered, which, to be fair, Eccleston and Tennant did the same thing. So there is precedent for this. Bring people in who maybe hadn't, I'm one of them, people who hadn't considered watching the show to watch the show. And then you have a whole new load of fans. And I think this is the same with Vida Setu, by the way. I mean, she almost admitted as much in the final Doctor Unleashed of the series. I did not see him regenerate and think, oh, well, that's that for him. The only reason we don't see him again is if the progress of his career just makes him too expensive, or the show's not on anymore for him to be on it. But, and you've already mentioned Visric being both black and queer, his casting was a landmark. But I'm of the opinion that his performance, which is what made him just a worthy inheritor of the role and of the work done by all his predecessors. And I'm personally not of the mindset at all of missed opportunities or not what we could have got, or I've heard that so-and-so he deserved better. I'm kind of like, well, maybe he should have hung around longer if he wanted more. He never got to be with a Dalek or a Cyberman quote's gone around again. It's kind of like, well, I think if Russell thought you were only around for 2 years, he would have given you one. And I do think in the event of him returning for some kind of special, you can put cash money on this. The first thing he'll do is probably share the screen with one of those big villains. But ultimately, did I like what I saw from him? And that's my only barometer. I'm not really interested in what the people online are saying, what people in the media are saying, or what the general consensus. If the general consensus is slightly turned negative towards him, that does not mean I have to turn negative towards him, unless I have reason to. I felt a particular way about him watching him, and I've been given no compelling reason to change my mind on that. But I liked him, and then he left, and I didn't like the way he left. And it's like, okay, did you like what you saw before? Well, why would you stop liking what you saw before? I liked him a lot more in series 2. I think that's when he felt we nailed it down. And yes, I don't think we got the maximum we could from him. But as you say, Ken, Paul McGann and Christopher Eccleston are the perfect examples of, I don't think they are lesser doctors because they maybe had less time than other doctors. It doesn't mean that everything was like perfect by any stretch. But I don't look back on this time, on him specifically. Let me be clear what I'm nailing this down to. Him specifically as the Doctor, I don't have any, I say regret like it was up to me, but I don't have any regret that decision was made given the work we got from him.
No, he was awesome. I loved him. I'm just sad that we're not going to get, because like you said, he was just finding the Doctor this season. Imagine what Ncuti in the comfortable place with the character could do for one more season.
I don't disagree with that at all. I don't have a you get what you take and you like it approach. And there is no doubt when he left, I think when he meant, I can't remember what the line is in the reality, or something like, oh, no, I like this face, I think was the line. And that's the kind of the confirmation of what we suspected. I know I did feel, it's a pity you're leaving. But it's like on a party, when someone leaves a party maybe earlier than you like because they were fun to be around. I'd still rather than they came to the party than not at all. So I'd rather him do it for 2 years than not do it at all.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on
that. But if we transition to what I suspect will be our most spoken of talking point, I'll start with you, Ken. We spoke about it a bit on our Reality War pod at the time of conversation. But as we speak, we don't know when there'll be Doctor Who again, and we don't know if there'll be Doctor Who again. Now, as I've had time to plan this, I don't specifically want to talk just about Doctor Who, partly because we've done it a lot, but almost television, the current state of television, where Doctor Who fits, if it fits at all, in the current TV landscape. And this includes both American television and UK television, and there is something of a connection between them. Ken, so I'll start with you first. And this might also be a chance to bring in the decision that was made for the surprise Billy Piper appearance at the end of the Reality War.
Yeah, well, yesterday, as of this recording, was Doctor Who Podcast Day. I was on Type 40 earlier this week, where I had a really extensive conversation about a similar topic, like where do we go from here? And just an attempt using the scraps of knowledge of a former television professional to kind of set certain things, kind of dispelling some misconceptions about things like ratings and all that kind of stuff. And television right now is a changing dynamic. I don't even think we're going to be calling it television for very much longer. It's just not a thing. Whether we just call it some kind of visual content or something, because there's almost a blurred line now between series television and motion pictures. I mean, you can watch movies that are out in movie theaters right now at home streaming almost at the same time. And so much of that, how we're consuming media is changing. Even podcasts were once a strictly audio medium. And now you go onto YouTube and there are people basically having these sort of live talk shows with cameras and things. And so much of that is changing. And because it's in, I'll use this word very decidedly, in flux, there's just so much that's still undecided. It hasn't found its footing yet. Much like AI, right? We have an understanding of AI, but we're certainly only in its infancy in both the pros and cons of its use, its power. Well, television right now, I think, is the same way. And we just don't know what's happening with it. Now, here's my take on a lot of what's going on. Is it canceled? Because they keep using the word canceled. And the answer is a hard no.
As Emma has reminded us a lot of the time, technically the show never has been cancelled.
Never has been cancelled.
Well, that's right. It's been paused. It's been on hiatus. It's been on long hiatuses. It's been on short hiatuses. As a matter of fact, almost every year since the end of David Tennant, it's been on a hiatus of some sort because the Moffat production team needed more time. They went back and did some extra David Tennant specials. That was technically a pause or a delay or whatever you want to call it. And maybe we're in another one of these pauses. Now, maybe this will be more extensive. Maybe it'll take a couple of years. Is it on pause? Maybe Russell, as executive producer or whatever title we can give him for what we now call the Whoniverse, or however you want to say it. Maybe there's someone else who's going to come in under him that he can start splitting it up with the war between the land and the sea. And we know that's a miniseries, but just as an example, let's say there's other things down the pipeline. Maybe he has a vision for Series 3 and Series 4, but he turns it over to other people for a more day-to-day operation. I think that could be positive to get some fresh voices into the mix. I think if that's the way it's going to go, even if it takes a couple of years, I think we'll all agree that he stands very high on our pantheon of people for bringing the show back in 2005. But I think a lot of the criticism of his tenure, the RTD2 tenure, is valid. I mean, for me, without talking about any of the political decisions, the choices to make certain statements in the show, the number one criticism, I would say, was he didn't take his own best advice, which was when the show came back in 2005, they learned the lesson of the 96 movie and ripped out to a new audience what the show was all about. They walked them by the hand into the lore of Doctor Who. And when they started back up with Disney, they jumped right in almost the same way that the 96 movie did, just assuming that everyone who was going to watch it knew all of the lore. And I think that was a mistake. I think even old school fans would have liked to see it drip out. The show is a mystery. That's what attracts us to it. And a mystery likes to drip out slowly. No one goes into a mystery finding out the answer right from day one, except maybe if you're watching Columbo, but that's a whole different dynamic. It's so weird to read people discuss. It only got 1.1 million viewers on a Saturday night. Stop. That's so dopey to even talk about that anymore in 2025.
Well, it's important to state the BBC themselves on the UK figures actually were quite positive about them, not in relation to how many people are watching Saturday night on television, on linear television, but how many people are watching it, whether it's linear television, whether it's on iPlayer, because for those of you outside the UK, the episodes were on Saturday night in the evening, but they dropped on iPlayer to watch from around Emma, I forgot
8
the
a.m.
time.
8 a.m.
8 a.m.
Yeah,
You could watch it before, and personally, that's what I did.
if you wanted to really drill into that data of the stuff we know with watching the show, I would love to see the breakdown of ages and genders and things that were watching the broadcast, because I'm sure it all skews much older. Diehard fans are going to try and find it streaming, and the kids, and I say kids, I'm not trying to be disparaging. I'm painting that with a broad brush. That basically means everyone that's younger than me, unfortunately. The younger audience, people who are in their teens, their 20s, their 30s, even into their 40s, how do they consume their content? Are they sitting down and turning on a screen in their home at a set time, at like appointment television? It's just not how I observe younger people consume their media.
They do. I don't think we've had anything for series 2, unless you've heard something I've missed, Emma. But I know for series 1, the BBC said that the numbers between 18 and 35 actually were quite good, and they were very pleased with them.
Yeah, that's all I've heard out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, not necessarily watching it like, 6:45 on a Saturday night, but, they watched this. They watched this episode at some point between Saturday and I think Tuesday. Maybe it wasn't live, but they did watch it.
It's clear that the BBC doesn't really care about viewing figures in that way, because talk about the totality of BBC 1 to whatever content, they make still obviously big dramas. They will drop them in their entirety on iPlayer. So you'll watch it on, you'll turn it on at 9 o'clock on, Saturday night, Sunday night, whatever, your prestige crime drama. And the continuity announcer will say, the next episode is next week, 9 o'clock, but you can watch the whole series now on iPlayer.
Just trying to give a specific example so we're not talking the abstract. There's a show, and I believe it's on Paramount Plus in the US, called The Gold. It's BBC 1 over here. Yep. That's a perfect example we're talking about. I think it might finish now.
Yeah,
it was on recently, The Gold, but that was on TV for, I think, 6 weeks. If you had a spare 6 hours, you could watch it all in one sitting.
If they cared about viewing figures and they were desperate for people to watch it at make appointment television, they wouldn't drop it on an iPlayer and watch it right now. It's on so people can watch it in a traditional manner, because they understand not everyone wants to watch it on iPlayer. Not everyone can watch it on iPlayer. There's still quite considerable parts of the country that haven't got the broadband speeds to watch it on iPlayer, stream it, if you see what I mean. So they want to keep the traditional way of watching things and also have the box set approach. So they're having the cake and eating it. But if they really cared about viewing figures, they wouldn't do that. You would have to watch it at a certain time.
100%. I think actually Doctor Who might be the last show left.
It's one of the last ones. I said to Chuck,
week to week.
Yeah, that it was still coming out week to week. So the only ones that aren't doing that still are the game show type things, the ones that have a competition element, your Master Chefs, your Destination X's, your Traitors.
And that's their whole angle, is keeping you hanging like that, those kind of shows. You take that dragging it out kind of thing out of the mix, I don't think people really are as excited about it.
Well, it's more that Doctor Who is kind of the outlier amongst the only things that are left in the BBC that go out in that way. I mean, you have all the game show type things and then Doctor Who.
And I think if we really drill into it a little, I think it's really just some genre programming that still drips it out like that, because they know that we have a fan base that's different than anything else. We don't tune in to what we watch casually. We take it very seriously.
Emma, if I bring you in to continue what you were saying.
Yeah, it's actually quite handy, because it sort of it leads nicely into what I was going to bring up, was that I don't know if Doctor Who really fits how TV is being made now. We're in a really transitional place at the moment where TV is this sort of weird thing between TV and content. Doctor Who is now in this place where almost long form TV as a idea is kind of old fashioned. They're obviously still making dramas like Wednesday and Stranger Things and things like that, but they come out very few and far between now because they cost so much money. They take an age to make. I've seen quite a lot of pushback to this online, but I think it's a bit of a separate conversation. But they come out on Netflix very sporadically. In between, I sort of blame the Morbius film for this. Now, when that went viral, even though it was a terrible film and did numbers because it went viral, and the memes that came out of it, and the Minecraft movie.
Ironically, with Matt Smith at the centre of those memes.
Yes. I mean, but the problem is, I think that TV executives and people who make this stuff have seen this and gone, we need viral moments. We need things that you can clip out and make memes of on TikTok. I shared a tweet from when The Well came out about how are we supposed to make drama when someone was saying that they said to their mate that they really liked The Well, and they were like, oh, I'll go and check that out. And they basically searched up on TikTok and watched it in 15 3-minute increments. That is how the youths are consuming TV now. Basically, the people who make TV are going, holy shit, how do we make TV and make sure that people are jumping onto it via TikTok, Instagram, make YouTube videos about it with like, the old pog face and like, you won't believe what happened next. And this is how they think they have to make TV now. And this is why I think Russell fell into this trap a little bit and why he almost went away from what he knows. Because we know he can make Doctor Who. He made lots of Doctor Who and quite a lot of very good Doctor Who. But I think that this series, particularly series 2, it felt like they were trying to manufacture these content, inverted commas, moments, these viral moments, these things that people would clip and make memes of. And it was detrimental to the show because he was trying to chase that dragon. We don't know how to make Doctor Who and fulfill those requirements yet. We're in this really weird transitional place. I think Star Trek's doing it too. Ricky, you probably might yell at me, but I think Strange New World's doing a bit too.
No, you're absolutely right.
They're trying to do these kind of like shock things, and like you see a screenshot of it and go, "What? That's not Star Trek's doing that." And then you go and look at a meme, or you go and look at it on TikTok, and you watch the clip, and then hopefully you'll go and watch the show. You'll buy your subscription to Paramount and go watch the show. That's what they're trying to do. Everything is memes and inverted commas content, and we don't know how to make Doctor Who like that. And I don't think it was very successful as a result. I'm slating youths or whatever, like Gen Zs, like Gen Alphas, brain rot, like people like that. I don't watch TV really anymore. The TV is a YouTube medium and a thing to put football on. I don't sit and watch traditional TV unless it's really Doctor Who or the occasional thing on Netflix I might check out. We don't understand as a society almost where TV is going, how we consume these long form media yet. And the solution that TV executives come up with as to make it viral, make it so they make memes out of it. So you go to the screen and like throw chickens at a bloody screen. All these sort of weird things that have been happening. We're still trying to figure out this language. And unfortunately, I think the RTD did fall into this trap of trying to respond to that by making, the things like Dugadoo, we're going viral. Dugadoo is entirely there to go viral. He's trying to balance, I've got to appeal to the young people. How do I do that? Okay, I'm going to make the show so we have these clippable moments. But I think it was to the detriment of, like, he ended up second guessing himself. He couldn't make it like he used to make it.
You're right. The thing is, it is impossible to figure out what will go viral and why will it go viral. Who would have fucking thought like a Jet2 holiday advert?
Because it's unpredictable like that. That's the thing. These people are trying to catch this lightning, but they're trying to force it. But you can't force these sort of things. They happen organically. That's the funny thing about them. They evolve. So trying to force it by putting Dugadoo in there doesn't work.
I was going to piggyback on quite a few things you said, Emma, but I'll bring you in now, Rick, if anything you wanted to add.
Yeah, sort of what Emma was saying, and Ken as well. My biggest concern about all of this, granted, things like television licenses are very foreign to us over here. We don't have anything like that. I saw an article last week, I think, or maybe this weekend, where the BBC was talking about how TV license revenues are down. And I'm like, are you still fucking counting on that? That can't be much longer for this world at all, I think.
That's its primary funding.
Well, I know. And it's kind of the same as the big three networks over here, CBS, ABC, and NBC. They're so ossified and fossilized in their way of doing things. And
I'm very shocked that the BBC hasn't moved towards the streaming option. I mean, iPlayer is incredibly popular. Just get the hell away from this licensing thing or whatever. Everyone seems to hate it. Go to that model.
Problem is they're trying to find a way to do it without it costing people anything.
Right.
Because the BBC is founded fundamentally on the fact that you will not see adverts on the BBC.
Right.
You will not pay for the BBC at point of contact. Obviously, you have to pay, you think about paying a TV license, but it's not expensive. It's, what is it, 145 quid a year at the moment?
It's actually relatively quite cheap. Amounts you get, because we're not talking about just television, we're talking about radio as well.
I mean, because this funds orchestras, this funds radio, this funds world service.
News. Yeah, we're about to say the world service funds foreign news. Like, there are people in other countries that often depend quite heavily on the BBC World Service. So it's relatively not expensive, but the model is very unique. You don't really get it in many other places.
Yeah, so trying to balance that and also, this thing of like, oh, it's outmoded. Yes, it is. But the compromise is that, you turn on the BBC and there's adverts on it. Frankly, I've sat and watched. I mean, last time I haven't been to America for many years, but just turning TV on, not advert breaks, it's telly breaks between adverts.
Yeah.
Oh, you're not wrong.
Unwatchable.
And the thing is, we've all been podcasting for a long time. People don't want to pay anything. As a Star Trek fan, when Star Trek came back in, what was it, 2016, 15, whenever, people, and they're still, I'm not, it's behind a paywall. It's $5 a month. And you don't even have to subscribe for a year. You could just pay for it while Star Trek's on and then cancel your subscription until the next season.
To be honest, I've got to the point that with a lot of these series like Star Trek, I know it's only $5, but like everything's $5. So by the time we've paid for everything we want to see, it's a lot of money. We sort of do the thing of like, if there's something we like that, call us bloody Luddites, we go and buy the Blu-ray because they come out quickly. There's no adverts. We can watch them. We can pause them in between my daughter flipping out about something or other or telling us a very long story about Pokemon, which is a new thing. The Blu-ray of the whole season of the latest thing of Strange New Worlds costs £15.
As a low-key rise of some people going back to physical media.
We are adamant about physical media in this house. I'm sitting in a room full of Blu-rays at the moment. This is the way of all flesh. Everything's going away.
The point I was trying to make, though, is that whether it's a license fee or a cable subscription or a streaming subscription, you're going to pay for it some way. Yeah. And I think all of these monoliths that are out there being run by octogenarians who just don't understand, they need to find a better way to market this stuff so that people aren't going to complain about, I understand the BBC needs the license fee, but you've got a whole generation of people who bristle at paying a license fee, but don't mind paying $5 for a cup of coffee. So there's got to be a way to leverage this stuff into a more modern mindset. Also, another problem that I have with both Doctor Who and Star Trek is, I don't know about the BBC, but Paramount has changed hands at least 5 times since Star Trek came back. And, we'll watch a season of a show and then we don't know if we're getting the next season in 6 months or 2 years. That's kind of the one of the things we're talking about with Ncuti leaving Doctor Who. He's like, you don't have a contract yet. I'm not going to sit on my ass for the next year and a half missing out on millions of dollars while y'all try to decide whether we're going to do the show again or not. And that's almost the business model right now for everything that's not reality TV. And that's frustrating as hell.
We can stretch as long beyond Doctor Who and Star Trek. Whatever your favorite show is, it comes to the end of its series or its season, you get your last episode, and you don't know if that's it or you'll be getting more, and you don't know when. Mm-hmm. And I sometimes think Doctor Who was always the exception because it's been an exception in so many ways. The way it was created, how it came about. If Doctor Who didn't exist, you wouldn't invent it. So we sometimes think it's this lovely it's just this little island unto itself that won't ever get swept away by climate change. And it's like, oh no, the tide's rising and everything around it is potentially vulnerable. It doesn't mean, by the way, that the Doctor Who is done. It just means that we can't always assume that it'll be fine no matter what. And I don't think this is really to do with, this is not a qualitative issue. It isn't to do with whether you like the show or not, whether the episodes are good or not, whether the Doctor's good or not. Some of the stuff we've spoken about. This is a lot more to do with the bigger model of television. One thing that, because recently we haven't mentioned Billie Piper yet. Billie Piper has done a couple of cons, and obviously she's been asked about, so you the new Doctor or what? And she obviously said, I don't know how much I can really say, and I can't really say much, but she had said it did happen very quickly. There's no doubt that obviously we've already spoken about how Ncuti left and how that was not the plan. So obviously, and with the reshoots, obviously there was a lot of scrambling going around, not a lot of time to plan things. One thing I just think is important to get on record is, one complaint is Russell's brought Billie Piper in with no plan, doesn't know what he's doing. He might not have any plan. He might not have any plan when he cast her. He might not have any plan now. He doesn't need to yet. If and when they get back on that Bad Wolf set to film something, he better know then. We don't know what the plans are behind the scenes, but if Russell doesn't know what exactly he wants to do with Billie Piper, he doesn't actually have to. I'm kind of like, if you need time to think, it seems you might have some time to think, take that time to think. Don't go on Instagram and say, here's what we're doing, if you don't have to. There's no need for him to kind of rush anything. When it's time to film something, you better know then, but he won't need to know until that time. And the alternative, no one discussed the alternative. I spoke about quite a lot on the reality war, but the alternative of not doing that is you having Ncuti regenerating to no one. We know what the fan base is like. we've been part of this fan base for a while. What do you think the discourse is like if Ncuti regenerates regeneration energy and then end credits and no sign of another Doctor? I think the conversation online would have been even more scabrous and vicious than it is right now.
Doctor Who fans were going to be mad no matter what you did. That's automatic.
That is also true. But that was what Jodie's regeneration was. The Power of the Doctor episode, she regenerates, the camera pulls back, and then it fades to black, and then that was the credits at the time of filming, because this was before they knew Tennant was going to do these 3 specials. And then they got Tennant in later to film it. You film a standard regeneration. But if Ncuti regenerates into no one, I mean, the sky in the minds of fans truly has fallen then. I'm not saying that this was a stroke of genius from Russell. I'm saying the alternative might potentially have been even worse. And as you said, Rick, it's not fun for fans to be somewhat left in the dark and be told things that we know are not true. And this was always the plan, and we know that's bollocks. But I think, why would they say this? I do think there's a reason for trying to put out some sort of false narrative. First off, lots of people who watch the show don't follow the behind-the-scenes stuff like that. They will hear that and be like, oh, all right, okay. And then they go about their day. It's just like us maniacs that are kind of scrounging around for every bit of information and want to know everything. And you hear that, and look, we know it's nonsense. And yes, give us the writer's tale too, please, when we can get the true story of what was going on there. But if you are trying to get this show to find a home at Disney or elsewhere, I understand you're trying to give the impression of it's a production that knows what it's doing, is relatively in control. And hey, actors leave shows all the time. That's normal. Rather than something of, we had this person, they decided to leave last minute, we got someone else in last minute. If you're going into meetings with, and I don't have inside info, I'm just speculating, with Netflix or what was it, Warner Discovery, I think, own HBO, Warner Media own HBO, and you go into meetings with them, it's not ideal if they say, well, hold on, well, we're hearing apparently that you lost your lead actor at the last minute. It's easy if you can say, no, he was always going to leave, that was always a plan. You can trust her. Because, I mean, good God, anytime Russell posts anything now, his comments are just people vomiting abuse and criticism and what's going on and leave the show and retire, bitch. And, that's basically what he's had to deal with for the past 2-3 months now. So he's not doing that. He's doing that because, I'm just going to have to swallow this. I'm going to have to swallow everyone's shit people are giving me because I'm trying to guide the show into safe waters. Now, whether he can is a separate thing entirely. I think we can see that he is trying to do so. And if it means he has to just swallow a lot of shit from us, and he's like, well, that's kind of what I'm going to have to do. We're going to have to put something out there that we know that's not true. But I have a measure of sympathy because, okay, I know you're bullshitting us. I get why you're doing it. And if any of us were in that situation, we might have to do the same thing and give an impression of the waters being a bit more calm than they actually are. Because if the whole truth does come out, then maybe that. And also, we know what the media are like in the UK. I'm talking about. Doctor Who is a very common punching bag. Even when Tennant was at his prime and the show was its most popular, any excuse the tabloids would to jump on the show and basically say the show's shit, people behind it are shit, they don't know what they're doing, it's not as good as it used to be, no one watches anymore, no one cares. They hit that all the time, no matter what's going on with the show. So you're trying not to give them any more red meat. That is my interpretation of why they've taken the decision they've taken. It doesn't mean it's not annoying. It doesn't mean you don't see, you don't watch that Unleashed. You don't see Ncuti promote his new play being asked by Doctor Who. He gives his reasoning. And you end up rolling your eyes because you're like, that's bollocks. So it's annoying, but I understand. Ultimately, I'll take it if it means the show in some form can continue.
And you have to admit that putting Billie Piper's face up there has kept the discourse going far longer than if it had just been, who's the next guy or next person.
Yeah. I mean, not always in a positive manner, but yes, it has definitely kept conversation going. Just quickly on that, there were a couple of funny Blue Sky posts I saw. And one person said, I think this person is trans themselves. So the Doctor really is a trans woman. She transitioned to look like her ex, who she's unhealthily obsessed with. And there is, I think, throughout this series, it really came to the fore with Lux in particular, a low-level belief among some fans. I don't think it's a majority opinion, but there are some fans who have decided that Russell has contempt for them and for the fans, and anything they can jump on to prove it, they will leap onto it. So, and again, if I'm remembering right, Ken, when you were on the episode with us, we spoke about Lux, and we spoke about the bit with the 3 fans. And some people were like, look, this is what Russell thinks of us. He thinks we're fucking losers. It actually depicts the fans in quite a sentimental and very, I think, sympathetic way. But it was like you decided that he hates you. So any quote from a interview, anything from anything you can relate to him is like, this is the proof that he's laughing at us. He's giving us this shit and then he's laughing at us for hating it. And first, why would any writer do that? But there is, I think, a low-level feeling among the fans. Like, we've criticized some of Russell's episodes. None of us liked the finale. None of us thought it was great. I don't think it's because Russell done that on purpose. I don't think because he hates us and he likes making us angry. He just didn't write something very good. And the differences in TV, to come back to some of Emma's points, we are in a time now where, and we are part of this, we scrutinize episodes, and I think, Rick, you've spoken about this before, the difference between watching Tom Baker or Peter Davison and then watching Peter Capaldi or Ncuti Gatwa. We do scrutinize episodes like never before. I don't think that's inherently a bad thing, but it is different because, you've got people, and we don't do this here, but like people take screenshots of stuff, look back over old episodes to compare it to current episodes, the trailer drops, let's go through it shot by shot. I think those people are deranged who do that, by the way. I'm not offended by it. I'm just like, I don't have the time to go through shot by shot, scrutinizing everything in the shot of the trailer and therefore determining what we'll be getting in the new series. But it is true that since the reality war, the fan sentiment has become a bit like a 3-week old glass of milk. It's curdled. It's become incredibly sour. I actually don't think it's a Doctor Who thing because genre shows, we mentioned Star Trek a bit, in general, the foundation of them is enthusiasm. Enthusiasm of the people who work on them, the enthusiasm of people who watch them. At first, we don't really live in very enthusiastic times. People aren't enthusiastic about much. We expect people in positions of power to look at everyday, ordinary people like scum. I think this is where the whole meme of Russell hates the fans comes in. Ironically, though, more people, I think, than ever are consuming genre. I don't think any of them are happy. Is there any group of fans of anything that are happy? I'm not just talking about Doctor Who.
No.
Of anything. Every fan seems to be angry. Every fan seems to be annoyed. Every fan doesn't seem to be enjoying what they're watching. What were fans hyped for in the past 12 months? This is coming. Isn't that exciting?
I mean, the only thing I can think of is obviously the return of Stranger Things. But most of the things I've seen about that is people, how in the fuck have they only made this amount of episodes in this amount of time? People used to make 26 episodes a bloody year.
So even because you're right, that's a notable thing that people are jumping on. Oh, they're not kids, like they're all grown-ups. And it's like, well, people get older. Kind of what happens. Like, what you would do is stop the passage of time. Season 1 of Stranger Things wasn't 26 episodes. But it is like you're jumping on the things, and when I say you, I mean the royal you. You're jumping on the individual thing that you may not like as much and making it the thing to talk about.
People seem to miss, like people are basically like young people, I would say, again, young people who are 10 or 15 years younger than us, who missed the X-Files and the later stage of Deep Space Nine and Voyager things. They're going back and box setting these things and going, I want this sort of content back. I want long series. I want to be able to get into these characters. I want to be able to sit and watch something for a while, not have to wait 3 years in between 4-episode dribbles out of Stranger Things. That's the only thing that I've seen. People want these things to come back and they want to watch them. But I think people are frustrated. It takes so long and you get so little in comparison to some 10 or 15, 20 years ago. How are we making prestige dramas, good stuff, lots of it? Where is our ability to do that gone? I think that's what people are asking.
There's a couple of symptoms of that. And I agree. I've been bitching about the loss of episodic TV for years. But I think that when you get 8 to 10 episodes a season and you only get a season every 2 or 3 years, then the microscope comes out even more. When you had 26 episodes and maybe half a dozen of them were meh, you could go, all right, this one sucked, but we've got more coming. Now there just isn't the time for fans to be tolerant. And, and I'm not excusing the assholes out there, but just in general, the general displeasure with stuff. It's like, I've said this about Star Trek. Yes, they're dropping $10 million an episode and they look absolutely freaking gorgeous. But I'd be much happier if they'd go back to even a 15 or 18 episode season and maybe spend a little less on each episode.
I think I've said this about this series of Doctor Who. I mean, I appreciate that things like Boom looked incredible, but a part of me yearns for the days when we were spending a threepenny bit and a pack of crisps on it.
Yeah.
And we had much more of it.
One thing that I think maybe some people don't realize that, and films, not just TV films, they are so much more expensive to make and they take so much longer to make. So something that has, it's not a monster, but has its fans, like House of the Dragon, so that Game of Thrones spin-off. They finished the most recent series last year. The next series won't be till next year. One of the things I think for older users, it's like, okay, this series ends in 2025. We'll be getting another series in 2026 and 2027 and so on. That's not the case. And with House of the Dragon, it's not because they're being lazy, they don't want to. It just takes that long. It takes that long and it costs that much. And production on so much costs so much more. And I think these are wider, there's like none of us are economists, but I think there are wider macroeconomic reasons for this. Costs a lot more and takes a lot longer to shoot, partly because of effects. And the thing is, if it's like, why don't we just then go back to how we did it? Particularly younger fans would be like, you immediately get people online saying this looks like shit. I mean, I remember when, just a quick example, when She-Hulk debuted and the trailer dropped and they hadn't finished the effects. And the effects of She-Hulk didn't look very good. And my God, I mean, that show was going to get what it got because of the woman lead anyway. But that was kind of the pretext they had for saying, this is a joke. Ha ha, look at the effects on this.
I think the frustration is that you get things where you're waiting so long, like, 18 months, 2 years, even more between these series, and you're saying that, but they come out and they still look like shit. Me and my husband had they had the audacity to charge us to go and watch like the latest Jurassic Park film. It looked like dog shit. And they've spent, God knows, the GDP of a small country on that movie. And it was dreadful looking. So I think that's the thing. You're not getting the quality back from a long wait. You say if it's going to take 2 years to make it, but you're going to see every penny on the screen and it looks incredible. And we're going to have all these incredible actors we can afford to pay them. Waited all this time and it looks like garbage anyway.
Well, another problem, and Ken, you might back me up on this one, is not only is it more expensive to shoot, you also have like, I listened to a Foundation, the series that's on Apple Plus right now.
That does look great.
It does. But they've been joking about there are at least 12 executive producer credits on every episode. And the more expensive these things get, the more investors you need. And the more the investors are focused more on ROI than they are on the quality of the show. And the more hands you've got, or the more spoons you've got in the pot. And so what you end up with are shows made by committee that end up trying to please everybody that wrote a check, instead pleasing nobody, and you get a substandard show.
I kind of felt when you watch Star Trek Discovery, you spend the first 90 seconds of the credits reading every executive producer.
Yeah. Sometimes the EP is an honorific. Like, I know Rod Roddenberry isn't kicking money in because he hasn't got it, but because he's Rod Roddenberry, they put him as, executive producer on the shows and stuff. But I think if you go back to lower the production value and do good stories and don't have 20 people having script approval.
To try and bring all these points together, there is no doubt the current model isn't really working. We are probably in the middle of this liminal period where right now we can't see how it will change because we're not there yet, but someone will come up with it. Now, the worry is obviously that it's AI run ends up basically making loads of people unemployed. But there will be a model that will ultimately find a way to speed up productions and bring costs down. And maybe it's doing things more basically. Maybe it's changing fan expectations of what they're going to get. But there is going to be a new model because this model just isn't sustainable. And hopefully Doctor Who will be part of whatever that new model is. Because I mean, another ancillary thing that I sometimes worry, and this is more an American problem with TV, is that sometimes people don't know what channel stuff's on. I think the difference was, we recently, and I'm sure it's the case you got the Emmys coming up, we had the BAFTAs not that long ago. And before, shows that were on, that were popular or did well, you might not watch them, but you were aware of them. And there are shows, more than one, that won BAFTA TV awards recently, and I had never fucking heard of them. And it's sometimes a case of, are you watching this? What is that? And then you start talking for 5 minutes, like, what's it on? And they tell you what platform it's on. Like, oh, I don't have that. I don't even have that one. So no, I haven't watched it, and I won't be because I have no access to it. I think that's part of, Emma mentioned a while back that things are a lot more fractured. There's no monoculture. There's no kind of general people on going down very different roads. We used to all basically go down the same road, but we're going down some very different roads and going to very different places. We don't know what's happening. We don't know the road that someone else is going down.
Why people latch onto these memes, it's like the only monoculture we've now got. Like the Jet 2 holiday thing is the only thing we've got that's like universal language. So all the TikToks with that narration over the top of it, it's like when those memes go mega popular, that's the monoculture now. That's the sort of language we all talk because we haven't got telly that everyone watches. I mean, even amongst us four, right? We all watch probably more telly than we should. Apart from Doctor Who, have all of us got one show in common we all watch?
Possibly not, because I don't watch Stranger in the World.
We all like the same sort of things, but apart from Doctor Who, we haven't got one thing we all want.
Well, it's like when somebody says, you've got to watch this. I'm like, I'll put it on the top of the list with the other 400 things people want me to watch.
That's maybe part of the reason why television production is different, because there is so much more of it.
Yeah.
There's actually a lot more being made than there ever was, because there's more. You have your linear networks, we have our channels over here, then we have the streaming sites. We don't all share the same streaming sites. Like HBO Max is not a thing over here. Most of the others are, but it's not the same in every country. And then there's I saw a recent thing where the actual most popular network in America, I think, is actually YouTube. It's not any channel. I think when we're 18, might be 18 to 45, that's what they watch more than anything else.
I only really watch YouTube.
That's all I watch for the most part, except for Star Trek and Doctor Who.
Yeah, more than like Netflix, which is doing very well, or Disney Plus, or anything like that. I said it once before, but I think it was always important to state, as far as Doctor Who and Disney goes, that the person in charge of Disney was not the person who brought Doctor Who to Disney. That was his predecessor. It's not his show. It wasn't his gambit. Television, I think part of the problem that television and Doctor Who's been caught in is that television seems a lot more to be just about cost and not value. So it's a lot more of how much is this going to cost us, rather than what are we getting from it. And when I say value, I don't just mean monetary value. Us having this on our platform means what? So like HBO is the best example. HBO has always had a great reputation, often not watched by many people. But HBO knew, okay, it's going to cost whatever it costs. But we know the value from having this on our platform is worth it, even if it's not even massively watched by lots of people, because The Wire wasn't watched by lots of people, and it didn't even get nominated for Emmys until its final season. But people in charge of HBO clearly, there is value in having this show. I think the part of the reason why many of us and fans are so worried about Doctor Who is that we're worried that not just Disney or the BBC, but you're worried of any potential platform. Do they see the value in this show? We see the value in this show. We don't need to be convinced of that. But I think we're worried about, does anyone see the value in having this show and for us to watch? Because then we have a problem if they don't. And I think you already mentioned this, Rick. I suspect in general corporations actually don't know where the customer base wants anymore. And my working theory is because they're really detached from them. If you think of like the executives high up at, we will say Disney, what the fuck do they know about everyday people? And they'll probably get the idea of, what do young people like? Let's ask our kids. It's like, your kids are not everyday kids. Your kids go to like private schools. They'll never want for anything. I don't begrudge them, but they never want for anything. They will have problems because all kids do, but they do not have the problems that everyday kids have. And you do not have the problems that everyday people have. So how do you know what to give them to, at the very least, entertain them for half an hour to an hour? No, there's never been the case. I think more so because income inequality has grown. These people are just so detached from us or anyone in our social circle that they wouldn't even know how to program what we want. And that's not just a Doctor Who concern. That's a concern for what you want to watch in generally. Because you all mentioned YouTube, and it's like the people who put stuff on YouTube are not funded by corporations. It's people doing it off their own bat. Okay, Ken. So just any observations for anything else that we might have missed?
We've covered a lot of topics in this conversation today, and I've hit anything I pretty much wanted to kind of get out of my system. And I've been holding off my last few observations for when we get to series rating and MVP and so on.
Okay. Observations, Emma, that we might have missed.
The only thing I would say is that I think that as much as we've been pretty worried about where this is going, I think that people do still like this show. Just from having a small person in my house who's grown up watching this show. She's 4 and she loves this show. She wants to watch Doo-Doo, as she calls it. She will sit and watch it, and she is interested in it. She reacts to it how you would expect if you see her, she gets scared of it or whatever. But I think that sort of gave me a bit of hope that it still appeals to the youngest people as well as the oldest people, if you see what I mean. So there's still something to this. I don't think it's like a completely dead concept or it's completely worthless, as much as we've been, a bit harsh here and there with it. I think that having watched somebody grow up with it essentially up to this point, there's still legs in it. There's still a bit of energy about it. So I think I'm still got some hope for it, if you see what I mean. That's my observation.
Hey, Rick, anything else to add?
Nope. We've pretty much hit everything I had on my list here.
Okay. There's a few just smaller additional things on just some. I think some of the reaction towards Russell. I think I said something reality war. Well, the reality war, particularly its ending, was just a bit of a mess. Given those circumstances, I'm not sure any showrunner could have done anything better. I did not come away from that thinking, if only Stephen Moffat was writing this, if only Neda Mansour was writing this, if only Jamie Matheson was writing this. It's been put out there what we think the story was, and that would have made more sense, and I think would have been at least cohesive. Once you have the last minute thing of your actor saying, I'm going, okay, so we have to regenerate you. Okay, so that means we have to write a story that leads to your regeneration, which we didn't write. Okay, so the stuff we did write in film we have to get rid of, which means that other plot points, other character points and beats went, particularly Susan. Who's he going to regenerate into? We can't even regenerate into no one. The internet will fucking lose its mind. Hey, Billy, you busy? Can you come down to Cardiff for like an hour? I'm just like, that was just a horrible situation to be in. And I would not wish that on anyone. It didn't mean what we got was necessarily great, but you can maybe criticize the things that led up to that. But once you get in that position, you can criticize the first 3 downs being shit. But once you're 4th and 31, then it's like, yeah, this is probably going to turn the ball over here. Maybe just punt. There's just not much more you can kind of do. And there has been online some of what I would call safe delayed criticism. And I think some of these people are bots. All of a sudden, a lot of people criticizing the path of the show and criticizing Russell for stuff that's like, well, you could have said this ages ago. You're saying this now because you feel it's safe to say so. I've all of a sudden seen a sudden spike of these massive Chris Chibnall stands. I don't know where they were, but they weren't there when he was in charge of the show.
No.
A lot of Jodie Eurovision going on at the moment.
I think some of these people are bots. I don't think some of these people are real. But it's just like, again, where the fuck were you 4 years ago, 3 years ago, a year ago, 6 months ago? If you see this in your timeline, do not take these people seriously, assuming they're people at all. And on the whole series in general, we got, for my money, 5 good episodes out of 8. I think any TV show that gives you 8 episodes, if you get 5 good ones, I don't think you can call that a bad series. You're going more than half. You're approaching 2/3. I haven't done the percentage exactly in my head, but I think you're around 60%. And some of the really good stuff was really good. I thought 5 from 8. I'm never really mad from 5 from 8. And if you look back at all the previous series since the show's come back, at least, I think 60%. If you got 60%, that's usually among the stronger series. And I also don't have time for. There was a lot of, oh, it's same old from Russell. Oh, he's doing the same thing again. He can't move on. He's referencing himself. And I think that's basically just because of Billy Piper's appearance. Just to remind some people, we had a load of new writers in the series, first-time writers. Inu Ellens, Sharma Angel, Walfall, Juno Dawson. First all Melanie TARDIS. First ever black woman writer on the black woman, and I think black men to write on the show. First trans writer on the show. You're entitled to like it, not like it, feel how you feel. But you cannot say this was just same old, same old.
No, it wasn't.
It's factually incorrect. I know there's not talk about Russell, whether he's the wrong person for the job, he needs to move on. Like, maybe, well, he did speak on Tennant's podcast a while back about there have always been conversations about what happens after me, who succeeds me, when that happens. If he's not the right person, and I'm just saying this hypothetically, if he's not, the main reason might be, and this comes back to something Emma said, is that he does still believe in a very old school version of television. And maybe if you think he should lead, the person who succeeds him should be someone that maybe has a different outlook on TV, of how TV is made and therefore how you make Doctor Who. So the show used to be 6 episodes in one adventure, and then it became just 1 episode, an adventure. I don't have a solution myself, but yeah, maybe then if you do have to replace him, you couldn't have someone replace him and just do the same thing, like, 8 episodes, new adventure every week. It might have to be different entirely. So your last 2 bits, and these obviously will be a bit quicker. Rick, if we just come to your series, your rating for the series as a whole out of 10.
7.
Okay, Emma?
5.
And Ken?
I'll give it an 8.
I'm also at 7. Better finale, I think, would have been at 8.
So much good stuff going on in the season, and it's just a shame that it's overshadowed by a few stumbles.
Well, yeah, and I'll admit, when I was watching the finale, I didn't hate it. After it was over, I was like, that was a fun ride. And then I got online and everybody was like, oh, that was a piece of garbage. I'm like, what? And then some of the more rational discussion was like, yeah, okay, I can see that. But I enjoyed it at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not so someone as the whole what happened at the end then cancels out what happened before. So if I'm given 5 bad episodes, but I get a good finale, that does not make a good series. It makes a good ending, but not a good series. And if we move on now, Emma, I'll start with you. If you give me your MVP for the series.
I think in terms of performance, I don't think he did anything wrong. He did exactly what he was asked to do. He was incredibly charismatic while doing it. I enjoyed watching him. I'll probably say Ncuti.
Okay, Ken, your series MVP?
I would also second that, but in order to try to keep things a little bit different and throw a curveball, I'll say Steph Diwali.
Why am I blanking on her name? I know exactly you. Anita, thank you. Yeah.
As our companion that should have been.
I think we said because I know Rick, you particularly, as did I, loved her in the Christmas episode, Joy to the World. And we said, like, if the worst case scenario from her, she will get work at cons out of this.
Yeah. And no one was more surprised as me when she came popping out in the finale. That was probably, of all the surprises that we got in that finale, that was the one that was most satisfying. And I just put a little asterisk in there saying that had Susan made another appearance, then that probably would have been number one.
Yeah, and Anita's the kind of character where I definitely think it would be very Russell if he has the opportunity to, if we saw her again. I'm not convinced it's the last we've seen.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
Even if it's just Big Finish. Rick, your MVP for the series?
Well, Ken stole some of my thunder.
Sorry.
That's all right. Steph Diwali, but I'm splitting it between Steph Diwali and Keelan Doon.
Oh, yes, you really liked her from The Well, didn't you?
I loved her in The Well.
Yeah.
And I think both of these women took very small parts and made them huge. And while, yes, Ncuti did a fantastic job, and am I pronouncing it right? Varada?
It's Varda. I think you basically don't pronounce the second A, or just say V, because apparently she goes by V as well.
Okay. Sorry if you're listening. But, you expect them to excel. And I'm not saying that they should be not lauded for doing great jobs, but here are two people who could have easily phoned it in, and they absolutely nailed it. And I think they deserve some recognition.
So my MVP is Ncuti Gatwa as well. I think someone's done a good job if you'll be missed. And I haven't seen a lot of negativity towards him. Even if there has been something not towards him, there's a lot of he's gone towards him. And that's, you left the party early and people wish he was still here. I haven't seen anyone kind of say, thank God and good riddance.
The ones who did say that are the 9-line gang and not Doctor Who fans. They're the trolls that they're either automated or they hate Disney for some reason. And
so like no one worth paying attention to.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a lot more like he deserved better. And I've never actually had any issue how he was written. When I think of how he was written, we didn't get all we could from him, but how that Doctor was written and the adventures they went on and how he interacted with the galaxy. It took him a year to learn the language, but it takes everyone a year to learn the language. And when he learned the language, he's obviously spoke it very, very well. And I would hope and still anticipate that there's definitely a chance that we see him again. Apart from anything else, I do imagine that if there's like up to 60, there was like 100-year anniversary, you might still look as young as he does now. Yes, otherwise I think we can probably finish there. Okay, so if you have any thoughts on what we've just spoken about, you can email us at analysingdoc2@gmail.com. That's analysing spelled with S. And we are across social media at analysingdw. We'll be having a tiny break. So Emma, Ken, Rick, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening. Until next time.